What's up guys, Zero to my Kitsune here, and it's time to cover a series I've been meaning to cover for a while. Redo of the Healer. God, that's a stupid name. I mean, a relatively small and unknown manga that is about to make a big splash in the West. Why is that, you might ask? Well, because the main character is and it's slated for an anime adaptation. Okay, so the story we have today is about a healer, you know, the white mage, the doctor, the medic, etc, etc, and his quest for revenge against his former party members who wronged him. Okay, there's a lot you can do with that. Why are people acting like there's a countdown to World War III? Well, there are some aspects of this series that complicate things. Redo of the, I just can't bring myself to use that god-awful name, Kaifuku Jutsushi no Yari Naoshi, or as I just call it, Kaifuku, is a borderline hentai revenge fantasy light novel series created by writer Tsukio Rui in 2016 that later got a manga adaptation. Yeah, you heard me correctly, a borderline hentai revenge fantasy light novel. And it's slated for an anime adaptation that will most likely be streamed by one of the Western services. This is gonna be an absolute mess. Like, to put it bluntly, this is unapologetically everything critics incorrectly claimed that Shield Hero was. And people are starting to pick up on that before the anime is even out. It's even reached the point that other YouTubers are starting to criticize it.
Like, this show is just so goddamn edgy. You could slice your finger at how sharp the edge is.
Well, you're not wrong.
But is all the negativity justified? Or is this a case of another product being unfairly treated simply for being in the gray zone of content, that place between something devious and something generally accepted? Well, regardless, it's time to dive into this controversial time bomb, so everyone,
let's go practice medicine.
The story starts at the end of our hero's adventure, with the party facing the Demon Lord. It doesn't go well, but that's where the team's backup plan comes in. This is our protagonist, Keyaru, a man gifted with the abilities of the healing hero and serving as the party's cherished medic. Now see, in this world, healing magic isn't all that useful, since while it might cost you a pretty penny, elixirs pretty much got you covered. Now where have I heard that before? Being the healing hero though, his heals are exceptional, even restoring things elixirs can't. The trade-off with such powers though, is that he experiences all the trauma that he heals, like the wonderful experience of having one's limbs cut off. Needless to say, he doesn't want to do this. So they forcefully addict him to a drug, beat him, humiliate him, and treat him like a dog so that he will heal on command.
That escalated quickly.
What they didn't notice though was at some point during their adventure, Keyaru had, by the sheer volume of poisons they were pumping into his body, as well as some other things, obtained the skill Poison Resistance, recovering his mind and allowing him to, in a critical point in the fight, turn on them, letting everyone die before single-handedly defeating the Demon Lord himself and turning back time so that he can have his revenge on everyone who wronged him, all with the use of healing magic. Yeah, it's so ridiculous that even the one surviving member of the party, the mage hero Flare, calls him out on it, before he releases a Dragon Ball Z amount of healing magic upon the world, restoring it to a place before the heroes ever met him. So that's the first chapter, and the start of what becomes a revenge-filled adventure full of violence, sex, and lots of... But before we get into that, there's something that needs to be addressed. Keyaru is straight busted, and this will be the first of many elements that might turn off a person from enjoying the series. Being the healing hero, the only magical ability in his arsenal is a spell called Recovery Heal, but that doesn't stop him from making all sorts of different variations of the spell to fit the situation, like Simulation Heal, allowing him to copy the skills of people he's healed like a bootleg Taskmaster. Upgrade Heal allows him to alter things when he heals them, allowing him to augment stats, shapeshift, or even erase memories. Steal Heal allows him to drain experience and mana from people. And the granddaddy of them all, Corruption Heal, allows him to destroy things by healing them, while ignoring any forms of defense they might have. You can physically feel all the tension leave this series with every word I speak. But, devil's advocate, I do kinda like how all the powers are simply pushing the idea of healing magic to its logical conclusion, the manipulation of matter/life force. And other series have done something similar.
For the love of God, drop the meat!
But he doesn't get these slowly over a grueling, treacherous journey. No, we can't have our self-insert protagonist start off weak, so by the time we the reader have joined Keyaru on his journey, he has already learned all these skills, and he keeps them through the time reset, although his level and mana kinda hold him back early on in the story. Kinda. Speaking of levels, this story does take place in one of those RPG inspired fantasy worlds, including everyone having classes, stats, levels, and level caps, which I'm not a big fan of since these things in the story are basically glorified power levels from Dragon Ball Z. So Keyaru is super powerful right at the start of the adventure, you know, power fantasy and such. This isn't a story of will the main character succeed, but more of how they succeed, and by succeed I mean this is something I find common inside stories that started as light novels, and normally I eat that shit up. But here I'm kinda mixed. Keyaru isn't invincible though, and despite having skills and techniques up the wazoo, he relies on deceit, trickery, and preparation to take down his opponents. And he gains alchemy at some point, so that's a thing. So essentially, he's Batman, but with rape.
You ready for some prime time dang-a-lang time, baby?
And that leads me to the other thing that will probably turn off most people outside of the manga's pretty specific audience. Keyaru might be the most unlikable protagonist I've ever seen, even ignoring the fact that he's a rapist protagonist, which is already gonna push away the average reader. He is straight evil, and I don't mean in the anti-hero sort of way or even in the sort of evil most villain protagonists fall into. Keyaru has nothing he cares for. Like, even after he starts building a harem, because you know in a story like this there's gonna be a harem, even after that, he refers to them as tools that he would be willing to sacrifice at the first opportunity, and that goes double, triple, quadruple for his first companion Freya, who is actually the mage hero after being defeated by Keyaru and having her memories forcefully removed. The story does have some badass moments though, like how Keyaru, after turning back time to before he awakens his hero class, immediately jumps into action, ignoring that he by all logic should have lost his memories too, but you know, power fantasy, rushing to get a magical eye that allows him to see stats, and more importantly, getting a head start towards gaining poison resistance before he is summoned to the capital as the healing hero. This is one of the few times I got to see Keyaru actually struggle to do something, and I really like this scene. Him chowing down on poisons till he's about to throw up, only to see flashes of all the abuse he's gone through, pushing him to continue on raw hatred despite knowing that getting poison resistance will take more time than he has to prepare.
Let the hate flow through you.
This is the kind of stuff I thought was cool from the concept, kind of a gender-flipped hentai version of rape and revenge stories like I Spit on Your Grave, where the main character is assaulted and abused and spends the rest of the movie hunting down and slaughtering the assailants. Except here it's debatably bogged down by a lot of generic light novel and isekai elements. The story really kicks off though after he joins Freya to the nice on the surface but corrupted Joral Kingdom. His stay there is pretty good all things considered. He has a pleasant time with the cute mage hero. She secretly hates his guts for being the useless healing hero and he knows it. He gets a nice room all to himself. The maid straight rapes him on the first night because hentai, I mean because a male hero semen can increase the level cap of regular humans, which totally isn't the core mechanic of a certain eroge. And he even earns the respect of the famous non-hero Sword Saint Kureha after restoring her arm. Real talk, Kureha is probably the only good person in this entire story and does not deserve to be stuck in this manga with these monsters. Hashtag free Kureha. Now before we reach the climax of this summary, there's probably something we should talk about. This is basically a light hentai.
You're goddamn right.
The story is just peppered in sexual content with the vast majority of it non-consensual. I have no idea how they're gonna handle this when it's animated. I like the art done by Hagasoken, very high fantasy with female characters drawn with plenty of squish, but the artist essentially drew full-on sex scenes and then grabbed an eraser and told his editor,
Say when.
Personally, I like how artists creatively toe the line when it comes to not just simple fanservice but outright adult content inside of a technically non-pornographic medium, but this works too, I guess. Reenacting his first life, he refused to heal anyone after receiving the recoil of healing an entire lost limb, and in response, the mage hero with a smile on her face throws him in the dungeon where the entire kingdom's military forcefully addicts him to a drug, beats him, humiliates him, and treats him like a dog so that he will heal on command.
Boy.
As planned though, he gains poison resistance not too long after being locked up, and he bides his time, gathering power before breaking out and ambushing the mage hero, dropping his, I guess, trademark line before enacting his revenge. I genuinely fear for the animation studio if they decide to do anything even remotely true to this scene. Like, yeah, it's a straight up on-screen rape scene. And not the super fictionalized type of scene you'd see out of most hentai. This is some Kuru Inu shit that I won't describe past that. What I will describe though is what he does leading up to that. He dips into some Saw territory by playing a game with her where he breaks all of her fingers with the promise of letting her go if she can endure it silently, and God bless her tainted evil bitch soul, she actually does. But this isn't just Saw, this is Saw 3, motherfucker, and he heals both her hands at the last second before starting over. That's the kind of revenge this character is shooting for, and what seems to be the type of scene each story arc ends with. Sure, there are some H moments where the girl makes the classic ahegao face, but this is very much an example of how dark this protagonist is willing to be in his quest for vengeance, with scenes aimed more at sadists than simple perverts. And that is essentially what Kaifuku is, the journey of one evil guy planning and executing his revenge on an evil kingdom. Now, do I think it's good? It's okay for what it's trying to do, being this sexual revenge fantasy, and a lot of people are gonna be outraged, but beyond that, it's only okay. Like, a lot of this really does come across as a basic dark hentai, except the writer decided to put a little more effort into it, and I emphasize basic hentai because there are plenty of stories out there with tons of sexual content, devious or not, but still tell a compelling story that will stay with you. Now, to the series' credit, due to how much of a hentai it's like, there is a good amount of stuff that you are just not gonna see anywhere else. Like a scene where the main character tells a weak slave that he bought in order to have a companion to fight with that having sex with him will make her stronger, and that she should, quote unfucking quote, grasp her future, and by future he means his dick. But despite that, while I kinda wanna see how he gets his revenge, I find the series overall pretty forgettable, like literally. I forgot this existed till the PV was released, and then I forgot about it again until the anime man made a video about it comparing the series to freaking Berserk.
What is it that differentiates between Redo of a Healer and say something like Berserk?
These two series have two completely different goals when it comes to the primary method in which they entertain the intended audience. Like, I don't even understand how that's a question. Kaifuku is a borderline hentai revenge fantasy that is clear with its intents in how the adult content is handled. I'm not saying that there isn't someone in the world who got their rocks off at the horrific events that befall the characters in Berserk, but I can say with a fair amount of conviction,
For the love of God, drop the meat!
I don't know, to me these sorts of criticism boil down to I don't want this manga about rape and revenge to be about rape and revenge, but maybe I'm just salty that the anime man beat me to the punch in making a video on such a controversial manga. Twice. Now, I'm not saying that Kaifuku shouldn't be compared to any traditional manga, just because of its overtly perverted and sadistic nature, but there are plenty of better comparisons out there that shine proper criticism on the title without trying to make it something it's not. Overlord for one, because while I think this flew over the heads of some anime fans, Nazaryk's a den of evil! I can't remember if the anime ever brings this up, but there is a breeding farm on one of the underground levels, though Bone Daddy doesn't know it exists. Ainz himself is a hilariously overpowered protagonist in the traditional invulnerable way, which to some might come across as boring, but aside from that power fantasy, what also helps the show is the various characters and their interactions, both with Ainz and each other, which Kaifuku only starts to show in the later chapters. And just to drill in how evil they are, in the web novel, The Fate of Archie is much different to the anime. She isn't merely killed, she is taken as a straight up sex slave by Shaltir, and the story even makes fun of it by having a genuinely entertaining moment where Ainz, who all but forgot Archie existed, needs her for a mission, and Shaltir and her minions are sweating bullets at how they're going to make this presentable to Ainz. One more comparison I thought up, and what might be the most appropriate is Shield Hero, with the stories having multiple parallels, like being betrayed by a woman they trust, taking a slave as an ally, and eventually getting their revenge on the person who ruined their life. Hell, the comparisons go even further with both having RPG stats, them both using powers in creative and unique ways that no one else thought possible, demi-human slavery, governmental corruption, the list goes on and on. With this comparison, you can really make some strong criticisms of the story of Kaifuku, not surface level how dare the creator make a rapist the protagonist, but in terms of character, world building, plot progression, action, these are all the things that Kaifuku admittedly has a little bit of, but is lacking when compared to something similar. But as I was researching into the story, I discovered that while the light novel wasn't translated, the web novel does have a translation, and that got me wondering, did the manga cut anything out that might show up in the anime or portray a better story altogether? Now I expect the web novel to be a bit different from the actual light novel, see Overlord, but the answer is a resounding yes. 2 full volumes was the equivalent to about 15 manga chapters, and a couple of key things get either shifted around or outright removed from the manga. The most jarring of all though is that Keyaru doesn't maintain his memories from the time heal. Meiichiro was right, go figure. It elaborates on why Keyaru needs to let himself get captured rather than, leave the village before the Meiichiro finds him. And it even puts more time into actually showing him setting up the traps he puts his victims through. This is the kind of stuff I hope gets included in the anime because it can add some heft to a somewhat bare-bones plot. And before you ask, yes, the novel goes hard on those torture scenes. And I think that's a good segue to talk about the anime adaptation, because like I said earlier, I have no idea how they're gonna adapt some of these scenes. I mean, I won't be surprised they go pretty far with some of the stuff. I mean, Valkyrie Drive was basically lesbian porn and that got on TV, but what the hell are they gonna do for the rest? Now to wrap things up, I think Kaifuku is just okay. Like, it's not absolute garbage as some people are claiming it to be, but it is focused on entertaining a very specific demographic, and it's okay if you're part of that, but if you aren't, probably better to steer clear and just read, or at some point watch something else. And I mean that even if you like fan service, because even though people including myself got very mad at the Sword Art Online creator for backing down from criticism of his most recent anime, I do agree that there is a world of difference between reading someone's screens in a book and hearing them in an anime. Oh boy, get them bunkers ready for outrage bombs. But leave your thoughts on whether you think this series is good or bad, and maybe what you think the anime will end up like, and I will see you guys next time. And I'll make sure to come back to this topic after a few episodes, but until then, matane.